Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Christina McNeil, and this is NB12 for Wednesday, May 2nd, 2012, broadcasting from the Cable 12 studios on Robinson Road. In news tonight, Environment Minister Earl DeVoe clears the air on the status of BPC's oil licenses. Political parties tour the Family Islands just days before the general election, and what election observers will be doing in the country over the next few days. We have those stories and much more coming up tonight. Your NB12 starts right now. Well, the Bahamas Petroleum Company recently announced that its licenses were renewed by government a few days ago, giving it the go-ahead to drill an exploration well by the end of April next year. But as Juan McCartney tells us tonight, the oil company, which has become the center of fierce political debate, is for now dead in the water.
Despite what BPC says, its licenses have not been renewed. Minister for the Environment, Dr. Earl DeVoe, confirming that BPC submitted over $300,000 for 5 renewals, but that money was rejected and returned last week. According to DeVoe, BPC submitted payment for annual rental for its 5 petroleum licenses on April 25th. DeVoe says that same day, the ministry sought legal advice to determine what it should do. And the advice given was that the rental fees could not be accepted at this time, as the government had yet to determine its course of action in connection with license renewal. DeVoe today explained that the problem is that had the current renewals been granted, BPC would have been mandated to drill an exploration well within a year, and that would violate the government's moratorium on drilling put in place several years ago. DeVoe said the country still has things to do before anyone can drill for oil.
The Bahamas is not ready, nor do we have sufficient regulatory capacity to manage the likelihood of petroleum discovery. And we are doing our level best to ensure that we have that before such a permission is given. And so that really is the hurdle here, this legal requirement in the lease that if you get renewal 1, 2, and 3, and you've done everything else, then it imposes on the lessee a requirement to drill a well.
BPC has become a political football, with the F&M leveling attacks at PLP leader Perry Christie for admittedly being a consultant for the oil company, and PLP deputy leader Philip Brave Davis, whose law firm provided representation to BPC. But DeVoe says this decision was practical, not political, and furthermore, all his.
This is a decision of the ministry. We didn't kick our decision upstairs and ask the government what it thought. We had a position that, as a responsible minister, it's mine to do. What is the best thing to do in these circumstances? What are our legal options? We took those, and that's what we did.
DeVoe says the government has looked extensively into preparing the country for the possibility of oil drilling, but his personal belief is that it's not something the country should give the go-ahead for without broader consultation.
We've examined what other countries have done, what other states have done, and what is the best practice for the Bahamas so that you can put to the Bahamian people, okay, here are the options. And in our system, we would ordinarily decide based on receipt of a response from the people. Something as consequential as oil, to me, and its implications, is just as important as any of the fundamental provisions in the Constitution for the Bahamian people to make a decision on.
As for why BPC would say its licenses had been approved when they actually weren't, DeVoe said the company might have been mistaken about the impediments to permit renewal. Reporting for NB12, I'm Juan McCartney.
In the wake of PLP accusations that the government is using the public treasury to bribe voters ahead of the upcoming election, Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham made some serious claims of his own in Andros last night. He also spoke to conditions on the island as he tried to woo voters. Royston Jones was there.
Whilst recognizing Central Andros as a progressive Liberal Party stronghold, Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham told Androsians last night not to be fooled or foiled by false promises or alleged payouts in the final stretch of the May 7th general election.
Ingraham said that he received reports of attempts to influence the vote in this election, although he did not name anyone in particular.
I've had some very troubling reports about some unethical attempts to influence votes in this election down here. I don't want to believe what I'm hearing, that money is being thrown around, that money is being paid up front with a requirement that individuals photograph how they vote on cell phones to enable them to get the balance of the promised money after they voted. That's despicable and that's insulting. So I don't want to believe it. What is most shameful and disgraceful, though, about such effort is that individuals seeking to perpetrate this fraud are seeking to do so in the island of Andros.
The Prime Minister urged Androsians to vote their conscience, to vote for what they believe is right, and in doing so, honor their forefathers and achieve better for themselves and for their children. Turning his attention to the opposition, Ingraham said the PLP failed to act to cause the local economy to grow and prosper. He said the island's decline in population was a clear indication of that neglect.
The reality is the PLP have taken you for granted. Look at what they did for you, as little as is possible. And look at where you are. They stood by wringing their hands as your young population drained away to look for opportunities in Nassau, or in Grand Bahama, or in Abaco, or in San Salvador. And they failed to act to cause your economy to grow and prosper. Your population is declining.
Ingraham asked residents to compare themselves with other islands in the Bahamas, like Abaco, where between 1970 and 2010, the population grew by 164%, compared to Andros, where the population decreased by more than 15% during that period. The F&M leader told supporters the government has been working hard for them, and since 2007, several infrastructural upgrades have been completed, including roads being paved, a brand new $1.7 million dock in construction on Fresh Creek, and 2 bridges in South Andros. Ingraham also promised Androsians to address a long-standing issue, the regularization of people who occupy Crown land.
We'll pave the roads in your settlements of Bowen Sound and Fresh Creek and Barron Point. We're making progress, significant progress on the long, outstanding regularization of people who occupy Crown land. All those years the PLP was in office, they couldn't give you a piece of paper to say you own this piece of land.
The Prime Minister boasted that around 242 people have been approved for the grant of Crown land in North and Central Andros, of which around 100 people reside in settlements of Central Andros. He pledged that this process would be continued in the months and years ahead. Reporting for NB12 here in Central Andros, I'm Royston Jones.
The Progressive Liberal Party was also in Andros yesterday evening. Party leader Perry Christie and a small team of senior PLPs were in South Andros to promote the party's candidate Picewell Forbes. But the PLP delegation did not get quite the warm welcome it expected. Jasmine Bonamy reports.
After touching down in Mangrove Key, Andros yesterday evening, Progressive Liberal Party leader Perry Christie was whisked away to an unusually empty rally site. Christie and his entourage touched down in Mangrove Key shortly after 6:30 p.m. and only a handful of excited PLPs were there to welcome them. Over at the rally site, it was not much different as supporters slowly trickled into the park. While some chose to remain on the outskirts of the site, a small and eager crowd gathered in front of the stage. NB12 caught up with Christie just after he exited the stage. He told our news team that he was not surprised by the small turnout. Christie explained that there were a number of factors that played a role in the small turnout.
What has happened here on this island is that, firstly, Picewell was told at a very short notice that the only available time for me to come is now. So he had very little notice. That's why he came down with us. And the weather has sort of turned my timetable around. We couldn't travel yesterday. Secondly, there's no gas on this island, and that means that very few cars or people are prepared to come out. So I'm not unhappy with here because we actually have a good feeling as to who's PLP and who's not on this island, and who will support us and who will not support us. And so it's an island. This constituency is made up of Central Andros, the mainland South Andros, and Mangrove Key. So it's a big voting bloc, so to speak, and so I'm not concerned about that.
Despite the small numbers, that did not damper the spirits of those PLP supporters who attended the rally. Christie says he believes the PLP's message was delivered, and that message was one of hope for Andros residents. Christie promised supporters that a PLP government would immediately seek to boost the island's economy by investing in medical care, young people, and tourism.
What they really want to do is to be able to say, listen, I don't have to go to bring my goods into South Andros to clear. They can come directly here. So clearly what has to happen is this. Government, a new government, has to bring focus to communities like Mangrove Key. And what I promised them this evening is that I will bring focus.
During that rally, Christie also hit out at independent candidate for South Andros, Whitney Bastian, saying he could do little for the island as an independent. Bastian, who won the South Andros seat in 2002, beat both the PLP and the Free National Movement. However, he lost that seat in 2007 to Picewell Forbes.
You know, and I know, and Hubert Ingraham knows that cannot happen. Cannot happen. And you know that no matter how much the independent member or independent candidate speaks to you about what he can do, you know that he is not going to be a part of the government. And that Picewell would be. And if Picewell is going to be at the table, you have to elect him.
Before leaving, Christie asked PLP supporters to hand the PLP the South Andros seat.
Now is the time for you to think of your country, to think of this opportunity you will have, and to vote PLP. Once you do so, we will be coming back here shortly to tell you the work has begun and that the help you need is now here with you.
Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.